Hello dear children, welcome to the part second of this video lesson series. We are doing the lesson The Happy Prince from our supplementary book Moments. In this part, we shall take up the chapter in detail. The Happy Prince is a story by Oscar Wilde. It is about the story of a statue, the Happy Prince, covered with gold and many fine jewels. The story The Happy Prince dwells upon the themes like social injustice, redemptive power of love, and the loss of innocence. In this story, we come across a statue who was at one time a real prince. When the prince was alive, he was a happy person. He lived in a palace and did not know about human suffering at all. His life was full of joys. Upon his death, his statue was built at the top of a tall column in the city. The statue was covered all over with thin leaves of fine gold. For eyes, he had two bright sapphires, and a large red ruby glowed on his sword hilt. The statue of the Happy Prince looked beautiful, and everyone in the city loved to see the prince. Since he was placed high above the city on a tall column, the prince was able to witness all the sorrows and sufferings which the common people faced in their daily life. But the prince remained ignorant of them during his lifetime. This made the prince, once happy, very sad. A little swallow who had alighted between the feet of the happy prince to spend the night there became curious to know where did the drops of water fall from, as there were no clouds in the sky. He looked up and saw the eyes of the happy prince full of tears. The bird took pity on the prince and became ready to assist him in his desire to ease the suffering of the common people. There was a house in the street far away with open window where a small child was crying in fever and demanding oranges from his mother, who was a seamstress and had nothing to give him but the river water. The prince requested the swallow to take out the ruby from his sword hilt and give it to her, so that she could feed her ailing child. So, on the prince's request, the swallow plucked out the ruby from his sword hilt and delivered it to the seamstress. By doing this good deed, the swallow also felt warm and cozy despite being a wintry night. Although the swallow was waited for in Egypt by other swallows of his flock, still he stayed back with the happy prince one more night to run errands. On Prince's command, he plucked out one of the sapphire eyes of the statue to deliver it to the young playwright who was leaning over a desk covered with papers, and in the glass by his side there was a bunch of withered violets. His hair was brown and crisp, and his lips were red as a pomegranate, and he had large and dreamy eyes. He was trying to finish a play for the director of the theatre, but it was too cold to write any more, and there was no fire in the grate. So the prince ordered the swallow to give him the sapphire from his eye so that the young playwright can finish the play on time. The happy prince saw a little crying match girl who had let her matches fall in the gutter and get spoiled. She had no shoes or stocking, and her little head was bare. So the prince ordered the swallow to pluck his another sapphire eye and give it to the girl and help the girl. Swallow was reluctant to do so because he knew that it would make the prince blind. But on being insisted, he plucked out the prince's other eye, swooped past the match girl, and slipped the sapphire into her palm. Now the bird decided not to leave the company of the happy prince, who had gone blind by his deeds of charity. Although the prince was not able to see the sufferings of the people anymore, but he knew it was there. So he instructed the bird to take off the fine gold he was covered with and give it to the poor children who were lying under the archway of a bridge trying to keep themselves warm. The bird picked off leaf after leaf of the gold till the happy prince looked quite dull and grey. Then the snow came and the poor little swallow grew colder and colder. But he did not leave the prince. Eventually, he grew weak and died from exposure and exhaustion. Just at that moment, a curious crack sounded inside the statue, as if something had broken. It was, in fact, the leaden heart that had snapped into two at the loss of the sweet and kind swallow. The statue was no more beautiful and useful. It stood deserted. So the town councillors and the mayor pulled it down. Then they melted the statue in a furnace, but the broken leaden heart did not melt. So they threw it on a dust heap where the dead swallow was lying. When the god asked one of his angels to bring two precious things in the city, the angel brought him the leaden heart and the dead bird. God welcomed the two in his garden of paradise and deemed them beautiful creations and said, "In my garden of paradise this little bird shall sing forevermore, and in my city of gold the happy prince shall praise me." So this was the story. It is a romantic allegory in which a statue, which is actually a lifeless thing, talking to a swallow, where the bird is just like a human being who can talk, who can understand what the statue is trying to say. By such stories, there is a hope that gets kindled up in every heart, which tells us that if a statue can see the sufferings of human beings, when a bird can understand the feelings of other beings who are distressed, who are listless, why can't we, the human beings who actually have a golden heart, see in others? Why can't we feel that distress, that misery that thousands of people around us are going through? So, this is the story which provokes the thought inside us, which makes us feel like a human being, which makes us feel the need to talk to others, to understand others, to be compassionate to those who are downcast and downtrodden. So let's learn from this story to be more kind, to be more helpful, to be more compassionate towards the people who are undermined. That was the chapter. I hope you have learned something from the story which shall be useful for you in the future as well. We shall do the question answers in our next part of the video. Thank you and have a nice day.